So this is it, the moment of truth. This is after 4 days of waiting since reaching temperature and closing the kiln down. It's now cool enough for me to safely take the lid off the kiln and see what I've got without causing any cracking, and that's what I'm about to do. Right, I've got the tests out of the kiln and I've brought them out into the light because the kiln shed's very dark. And first of all, I'm going to show you the glaze tests made with ball clay. And I know it's been a very, what they call a very oxygen-starved or reduction firing. So even the clay has gone very dark, and these are very dark. But I think the general trend is brown with green. Green is not a surprising colour for a wood ash glaze. So first of all, I need to look at the sort of quality of the glass. And these have had extra glassing in the kiln because they were wood fired. And there you are, that's what happens if they're if they have scratches on the pony, what they do. So that one obviously goes darker. So these two, all of these up this end, and these are the ones with the higher percentages of ash to clay, are very glassed. There's no doubt they will make a glaze to cover a pony. At the moment, this one's talking to me. So what you need to look for, as well as whether it's shiny and whether it's going to make a glaze, is whether it moves a bit, whether it's gone a bit soft, whether it's going to drip. And you kind of need a little bit of movement to make it interesting. This one, I would suggest, is moving a bit too much. If you look at the very bottom, it's looking like it's pooling at the bottom and it's a little bit drippy. And if you look at the very top, you can see it's kind of moving away from that edge. So I would suggest that that one is going to be a little bit too drippy to want to put on the ponies. And then as you come up this end, again, still glass, but it's much more, there's very little movement on that. It's quite sort of static. So that's Molinia ash with ball clay. And I'm pretty much thinking that this one is my favourite of that. So let's have a look at it with china clay. So here is the Molinia ash and china clay. I'm immediately struck by the fact that you get a much greener green. I presume that's because china clay has less iron, therefore you get less brown. So this one, I think, would make the china clay would be a brighter glaze. So let's look at the quality of them. So if you look up here they're quite dry and matte, but up here they're greener. So let's have a look at these three in particular. This one, if you look, you can see that it's what they call that crawling. So can you see that there's patches of clay showing through the glaze? It's like the glaze is pulling up tight away from the clay and leaving these gaps. That's called crawling. So that, you know, if you wanted a crawling glaze, that will give you that impact. This one is obviously, if you look down the bottom, it's pooling at the bottom here. So you'd have to be careful with the amount of downward movement. The green is quite green and bright where you find it. So that's quite an interesting one, but you're going to have to be careful with movement on that, I believe, because it is pooling at the bottom. Could cause you trouble. To be perfectly honest, the ones made with china clay seem to need a lot more ash to make a decent glaze. And that's quite a challenge, because we know how little ash we made from an awful lot of Molinia. This one, maybe the ball clay, has got a lower percentage of ash to ball clay, and just from a collection point of view that really appeals. So I'm just going to look at this one for the moment. I like the difference in thickness, giving you different colours between brown and green. I like the fact that it breaks over this sharp corner, and so you get a very defined line. Where it is thicker, because it's thicker on the top half, you get more of the brighter green. Where it is thinner, you get more of the brown, and that could be quite interesting. I've got a feeling this is going to be my Molinia glaze. So if I turn it up, I have got M for Molinia at the top, B for ball clay, and the recipe is E. So let's go and look at the piece of paper and see what the percentages are. So here's the ball clay recipes chosen over the china clay ones, and the favourite is E. That's this one here. So that will be 40% ash, 60% ball clay. That's going to be my Molinia glaze. That's shiny and does green and brown. These are the china clay tests, and this one, which crawls, I quite like, because you'd end up with a sort of spotty pony. I quite like that. So I may be using that one, and that one is 60% Molinia ash and 40% clay, so same numbers but in reverse for the china clay.